afternoon, and welcome to Learning from Technology or with Technology, Meaningful Learning in Technology Enhanced Education. Our speaker, Sam Yousefifard, is an instructional technology designer and interaction designer at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. He has 2 masters in English language teaching and in media and technology education from the University of British Columbia. He's been designing curriculum and online courses for years, and he has been involved in a significant number of design projects in 9 departments and offices and 4 faculties at the University of British Columbia. He keeps himself pretty busy. In terms of research, he focuses on 6 major areas: instructional technology design, interaction design, media and technology integration in education, computer-assisted learning design, game-based design and assessment, and intelligent tutoring systems. It is with great pleasure that I bring you Sam Yousefifard.
Thank you so much. So this paper is about learning from technology or with technology and meaningful learning technology enhanced education. So meaningful learning with growth in online teaching and learning practices and educational settings, the efficacy of technology use has become a central attention among research scholars and practitioners. So what is meaningful learning? It's an intentional effort trying to make connections between new information and prior information, like activating your schema and trying to make connections between relevant or experiences that you had before to new experiences. Also, Jonathan Holland, Moore, and Mara mentions that meaningful learning occurs when learners are engaged in authentic tasks. So the authenticity of tasks is also important, and it kind of leads to active, constructive, intentional, cooperative, and working collaboratively on different projects. So what is meaningful learning with technology? It's there's some kind of characteristics that is associated with this kind of learning. That is, it needs to be active, authentic, constructive, cooperative, and intentional as well. So learning is most meaningful when there is an intention involved, and also using technology that enhances thinking would result in meaningful learning. And also all human behavior is goal-directed. That means that there needs to be like a self-direction involving any learning leading to meaningful learning. So there needs to be active involvement, willingness to move toward an objective, and a motivating factor involved. There are some characteristics associated with meaningful learning. A number of these characteristics have been investigated and suggested, like INT, which is intentional learning, cooperative learning, authentic learning, active learning, and constructive learning. Meaningful learning and technology. Technology integration is a very complex phenomenon. So the benefits, although the benefits of technology in classroom settings have been investigated, but there are still many unexplored areas that needs to be explored. Like meaningful learning in the context of learning technology also have been investigated, but there's still more kind of space for exploring more concepts that is related to meaningful learning with technology. The notion of learning with technology is kind of stemmed from the constructivist learning theory, as technology is very important in constructing knowledge, engaging students, and kind of challenging students in authentic context, because it could lead to a more in-depth understanding of what kind of learning occurs and how much learning we see occurring. So when technology is used for learning purposes, it is regarded as an intellectual partner as well, because there's an intellectual partnership that is associated with this kind of learning, because learners are actively involved. They're using technology for achieving learning objectives. And also, I'm sorry, let me turn it off. Okay. And when technology is used for learning purposes, it promotes kind of mental effort and capability as well. So as Lee suggests, meaningful learning with technology is when learning with technology in a meaningful learning environment, learners do not learn from technology, but rather learn with the technology. So technology is like a tool that could help them achieve their learning objectives. And the other most important assumption is that technology enables learners to build better interpretations and representations of the world. And there's a shared cognitive responsibility between the learner and the technology being used. So why meaningful learning with technology matters? Because it is kind of anti-passive learning. So instead, it kind of promotes active learning. So we have constant knowledge construction. And also it focuses on the cognitive focus of particular technology, which refers to technological affordances. And here the focus is to kind of promote some cognitive tasks and activities to kind of get them engaged cognitively. So the research objective. However, efforts to measure meaningful learning with technology have been limited, and they have been mostly for high school students. But this study kind of attempts to fill some of the gaps in the existing literature by, there's a growing body of literature exploring the efficacy of online instruction, technology-enhanced learning environments, but most of them are in secondary STEM education, unfortunately. And there are not many students that focus on meaningful learning with technology in higher education settings, like undergraduate education. So the purpose of this study is to investigate students' evaluations of their meaningful learning with technology. And the research questions are, how do students evaluate meaningful learning with technology? And how do participants' responses differ based on gender? So the method. The sample in this study primarily consists of 116 undergraduate students in education, and most of the students were female. And the instrument that was used was a questionnaire that was belonged to the study by Lee, and it had 9 major components and 28 items. The components were like intentional learning, authentic learning, perception of technology as cognitive tools, cooperative learning, community building for learning, model building for externalizing thinking, visualizing with technology, and experimenting for reflection, and writing for literacy. So the data was collected through an online survey tool and also follow-up interviews. So a total 116 students learning at the undergraduate level in education program participated and completed the meaningful learning with technology and attended the follow-up interviews. The participation was voluntary and it was anonymous. The results. So the overall scores from all items indicate that individual students evaluation meaningful learning with technology. And when there's a higher score, it means that there's a better understanding of meaningful learning with technology in that particular factor or components. So we ran a descriptive statistics of the questionnaire, and here are the results. We also ran binomial tests to make sure the direction of the students' answers, if they had higher or lower understanding of a significant component of the questionnaire. So the answer, based on the result of the binomial test, it demonstrated that the population proportion of the intentional learning factor was not equal to hypothesis proportion. It means that there were some differences between the level of agreement and also disagreements about or understanding of the meaningful learning, this component of meaningful learning. Also in cooperative learning, it was almost the same, so it wasn't equal, so there were differences. Also in the perception of technology as cognitive tools, there were differences as well. In the community building for learning, differences as well. In the model building for externalizing thinking, there were differences as well. And also in the visualizing with technology, there were differences as well. And also experimenting for reflection and also writing for literacy. So the population of the proportion of the total scale was not equal to hypothesis proportion either. It means that even the data was not normally distributed. So the people who agreed, who had higher understanding of the total scale was like 89%. And also the people who disagreed means that they had lower understanding of meaningful learning. So it was 11. However, the population proportion of authentic learning was kind of different because most students had a lower understanding of the authentic learning factor. So therefore, the results show that participants generally had high scores in all factors. That means that they had understanding of meaningful learning, except the authentic learning factor. In terms of male and females, descriptive statistics was run and Mann-Whitney test was run too to compare the differences. It's a non-parametric test that is used usually for this kind of focuses. So the test indicated that there was no significant difference between evaluation of females and males in intentional learning. also in authentic learning, also in cooperative learning and perception of technology as cognitive tools, also model building for externalized thinking and experimenting for reflection. And even in the total scale, there were no significant differences, but there were some kind of significant differences between the evaluations of males and females in CBL factor and also UET and also WRL. So we had follow-up interviews too. There were follow-up interviews and there were some questions that what kind of inspired you to get engaged in task and what challenged you to get engaged task and so the qualitative data analyzed through an inductive thematic analysis. So there were 6-step methods: data formalization, initial code generation, theme searching, theme revision, theme definition, and naming and reporting. So there were some themes emerged out of the questions, like how does technology help you have a meaningful learning experience? So there's reflection, deep learning, and peer interaction as well. Like one of the examples that technology makes me reflect more on the concepts that I'm trying to learn. And also, how does technology challenge you to have a meaningful learning experience? So 3 major themes emerged: lack of directions, lack of visual clarity, and lack of linguistic clarity. And also, what would you the other question was, what would you expect from technology designers to facilitate meaningful learning with technology? So we had user control, user accessibility, and user usability. So one of the examples that I wish there were some ways that could help us have more control over how to use technology for studying purposes, or in the accessibility. I hope they can make it easier for us to have more access to relevant contents. And also in usability, sometimes I find it too hard to understand what the task is asking me to do. So the discussion. So this paper aimed to enhance the meaningful learning with technology research and practice, understanding how technology could help promote meaningful learning. It's one of the influential factors that could impact the rate of engagement among the students as well, and also the learning experience and also the learning outcomes. Evaluation is very important, particularly in learning design and technology enhanced environments. It kind of leads to more improvements in learning contexts. And assessment instruments could really help because they have the potential of deepening our understanding of the efficacy of design, pedagogy, and technology use, and also learning instructional settings. So in terms of gender, there were no significant differences between males and females, but most of the answers were kind of high. That means that they had higher understanding of intentional learning, perception of technology as cognitive tools, cooperative learning, model building for externalizing thinking, experimenting for reflection. But it was very low, relatively speaking, because in authentic learning, I mean, they kind of proved to show that they had lower understanding of authentic learning. There were some differences too, like females had higher understanding or higher abilities in meaningful learning, like in components like community building for learning, visualizing with technology, writing and learning for literacy. There were some limitations, and the future directions are discussed as well. So the limitation was that sample size was relatively small, and also inferential statistics were wrong, but they still need to be more in-depth analysis of the matter. And also the focus was only students in education. So how about other students, in other faculties and other majors? And the level of education was only undergraduates, but also graduate students could be the subject of the study as well. So future area of research could be suggested here, like how individual differences could impact their meaningful learning with technology. We could include some variables like demographics, age, aptitude, attitude, motivation, prior experience, learning style, culture. And further research is also needed to determine to what degree this improved technology could improve students' performance, as well as their attitudes and interests in using technology for meaningful learning purposes. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. That was really interesting, a very interesting study. We certainly could use more research in this regard. I was wondering what kinds of technology, educational technologies, did the the students use before taking the survey? What kinds of things were they familiar with or comfortable or had experience with?
Oh, there was no particular type of technology here involved. It was mostly about using technology, like, for example, using an LMS, a learning management system. They use Canvas to work on some task, and also some knowledge exploration. There was some content involved, like there were some readings to discuss, and also there were some instructional videos that they watched. But with technology, we meant that using technology here, not a particular type of technology.
Yeah, I've seen, of course, as you pointed out at the beginning, the research is mostly at the K-12 level, and there typically, a study is done on a particular application or game or whatever, but a particular piece of technology. And as you point out at the end there, in terms of the discussion, this can inform the instructional designers who are producing educational technologies. As I can imagine that one reason that for example, authentic learning. Well, actually, before I say that, what do you get out of that standalone result of authentic learning being lower, while all the rest of them were so
I
good?
think authentic learning here, because of the questionnaire item. The questionnaire items about authentic learning, one of them was, for example, the task needs to be related to my daily activities. But here, because the focus was academic, and also it was a post-secondary, education course, they were more involved in authentic task rather than authentic learning, because I think it was kind of a challenge that they found through the question of that particular question that was used in the questionnaire. And it wasn't a reflection of that they don't value authentic learning, but they kind of assume that if they, for example, they didn't find any relevance between the question and their answers, because the question was asking like it needs to be related to daily activities, but definitely it's not a case in post-secondary education. It needs to be related to the particular field that they're doing. But one of, for example, I do remember that one of them in the interviews did mention that they do like to have authentic tasks, in online learning, particularly when they're using technology. Like when the task is kind of presents some challenges, some cognitive challenges, to have them through kind of motivate them to go and solve some issues that occur, in their real life too, but in a particular like academic or professional setting, not to their daily activities.
That makes a lot of sense. And can you talk a little bit more about the gender differences? The few items in which there really was a significant difference between males and females.
Yes, I can. So you mean the components? Which component? Okay.
Yeah.
So there are no significant differences between the total overall in the questionnaire. Most of the responses were different, but it wasn't just differences were not that significant. But it was really high in intentional learning. That means that they kind of had an intention for learning, and they appreciated the fact that meaningful learning is kind of associated with intentional learning. Because when there's an intention involved, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, it means that people have an objective. There's a goal involved. So there's a motivation, there's an incentive that kind of keeps them motivated to do that, and also leads to meaningful learning. But these are only some characteristics of meaningful learning, and meaningful learning is really too complex concept. It is multifaceted, and there is still some controversy, like some researchers kind of for example, included active and constructive learning as one of the components of meaningful learning, but some other researchers like Lee kind of criticized that and said that active and constructive learners could not be directly included as one of the components of meaningful learning. So there are still some controversies going on between researchers. But for example, in the perception of technology as cognitive tools, it was high as well. This particular components was kind of about like if technology helps them think better, reflect better, this kind of thing. So it kind of activates their cognitive engagement as well. And also cooperative learning was high too. It was more about like they use technology to collaborate with other students, to share their ideas, to share some feedback, and things like this. And also model building for externalizing thinking as well. So it was high as well. So in this particular one, they use technology to help them understand the content better, or their own thinking processes better, or to describe their ideas better. And also was high in experimenting for reflection. In this particular one, it was like they're using technology to kind of try out their ideas, to explore ideas, further and deeply, and also to make better arguments. So they believe that if they can have a chance and use technology to kind of test their ideas and test their kind of arguments, they could, it could lead to enhancing their arguments in the end. But as I mentioned earlier, the authentic learning was relatively low because I think that's mostly because of the questions which were not clear to them, these particular questions. Yes, and also females had higher understanding in community building for learning because females are more, I would say, positive in terms of research. Their research findings, they're more positive in going for collaborative tasks and also collaborative activities rather than, compared to men. And also they are more open to share their knowledge with others compared to men. And also they are more kind of open to getting support from other students as well. But these are only the research findings, not just my personal opinions.
Yeah, but those findings, I mean, those have been found to be the case in other research. It is not just anecdotal, for sure. That's very interesting. I think it would be interesting to see how, when if you are able to do more research on this, to dive into these things when students have used some kind of educational technology that is designed to be more engaging or more or designed actually to support meaningful learning in the first place, where that is the intention of the folks who built the technology is to actually encourage and support exactly the kinds of things that you're looking for here. It's kind of hard for me to imagine anybody would not want to engender meaningful learning.
Yes, one of the other research projects that I was involved in was that I kind of designed an online course with interactive tasks, and in that particular course, I was trying to investigate the level of engagement that interactive tasks could help them to learn better. And it was a very positive kind of experience and experiments, because in the end, the result confirmed that interactive tasks have some, pros, like they could kind of enhance more interaction, more cooperation, more collaboration between students. But also there were some challenges involved, like they had issues about understanding what the task was asking for, or they had issues about understanding, the task was too complex. But the reason that we designed it in that particular way, because we were trying to experiment that how task complexity could affect the level of engagement in task and also in the course. It was kind of intentional.
That makes sense. We are getting close. We have just another minute or so, and I know that there'll be thank you. The recording will be available on both Whova and the conference website for all those folks who are in Europe or elsewhere and couldn't attend this time of day. But it's been really wonderful to have you give this presentation. There's so little research, as you started out saying, there's so little research into the use of educational technology at higher education that it's just really refreshing to see something being done. And I hope that you are able to keep it going.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, that's one of my objectives, because I love research, and this is only one of the research projects that I focused on. But I'm also worked on 31 more research projects as well, because I believe as an instructional technology designer, research is the key to developing better technology enhanced education and also learning experience.
Absolutely. We need to know what works and what doesn't work and why in order to make sure it works better.
Exactly.
Yeah.